Incoming transmission.
The Klingonese word of the day is "po."
These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise.
So, this is a huge victory for the good guys.
Scotty, beam me up.
Resistance is futile. Live long and prosper.
Boldly go where no man has gone before.
Greetings and welcome to the Computer Resume podcast, the show covering the entire Star Trek franchise in chronological order for fans new and old. I'm your host, writer-comedian Mr. Todd A. Davis. You may have spotted her interviewing folks during Star Trek Day in 2023, but you definitely saw her as the Velocian bartender Talon Wazaria in Season 1, Episode 5 of Starfleet Academy, the Persian princess in the 12th season of RuPaul's Drag Race. Everybody, play nice. It's Jackie Cox. Yay! Jackie, hi.
Hi, Todd. How's it going?
Very well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm curious. I guess it could be pronounced Wizaria. I think Tawny and I discussed it as Wixaria.
Wixaria.
It could be Wizaria, but I think it's Wixaria.
Yeah,
That's a good question.
I knew a girl in high school whose name was Shayla, but spelled with an X, but it was pronounced like an SH. So I was like, okay, I've seen it. But then there's like X that's pronounced like Z. I was like, well, I don't know. So you say it one more time for me.
I think Tawny and I said it's Talon Wixaria, like Talon, like a claw.
Yeah, yeah.
She's got those long nails. Yeah, we decided the name like after like they'd already put it in the script that I was just bartender, and I was like, what's her name? And Tawny was like, I like it. So I don't know, like I guess it's canon because I say it is.
Yeah, I mean, like, plus you get one of the writers' seal of approval. That's gotta seal it.
She said yes. She said yes, so I think that counts. She also said yes because I think there's some like rules or something. If I have a name and if they ever bring me back, even if she's not a writer, she gets credit for it or something or money. I don't know how it works. I don't really know how it works.
Awesome.
And then I'm gonna leave this little nugget for you to noodle on and the listeners. Her name is an anagram.
Get out of town. Okay.
That's something you can noodle on.
That's awesome. Okay. All right.
Her name is an anagram.
Let's dive right in. In case there's anybody who doesn't who by the description I gave of your intro, in case people don't know who you are, I first became aware of you watching RuPaul's Drag Race, seeing you perform in the 12th season. I mean, gosh, what an experience that must have been. I'm surface level drag fan. Like I have such an appreciation for everything that goes into it, but I can't do it myself, and I struggled to explain it to other people. But if you could distill the experience down to, a few sentences, like
if we have sci-fi listeners or sci-fi, aficionados who are listening and who've never seen Drag Race, I would say it's very much like a competition show in the vein of any kind of like Top Chef, America's Next Top Model, Project Runway, but it's kind of like all of those things mixed together with like a lot of silliness. And there's something for everyone in Drag Race. Like if you love shows about people like creating and designing stuff, that's always an element. If you love shows about people like performing, there's obviously that. But if you also like shows about drama, there's always some kinds of drama going on too. So it's kind of like every reality show mashed up competition with like drag queens. It's a really good time. It's now in its 18th season. So if you haven't watched it yet, start with season 12. I think my season's a good season to start with too, because I think we're all very like I think we're all great drag queens and we're all kind of different types of drag queens, so I think it's fun to watch. And you can kind of like get to know kind of a broad swath of what drag is, I think, on my season. And we're not petty. I think some of the seasons you find some petty girls. we were not a petty group, which I liked.
Yeah, I will say, just to piggyback off of what you just said, like watching it, it really, like I said, it really gives me appreciation for like every single element of that.
Yeah.
As a stand-up comedian, I just have to remember my material,
Right. And hope
and
it's funny.
yeah, and hope it's funny. But there's, the God, walking in shoes, walking in the shoes, the
Yeah, and
outfits, the
honey,
hair, the makeup,
it gets
like,
worse as you get older. I would say like 'cause I filmed like 6 years ago now, and I tried on some of those shoes that I wore on that show, and I was like, God, I usually when I perform, I usually wear like not as crazy heels, but I was wearing some crazy heels on that, and I was like, what was I doing to myself? I was these knees, honey.
well, it comes
Whew.
out pretty quickly in the show that you're a big Star Trek fan, of course, when
It
because
does.
as I was watching the show, it's just kind of like that perked my ears. Was like, hey, fellow Trekkie, awesome.
And I got very lucky after we filmed
Hmm.
is when Paramount and CBS re-merged.
Yes.
So Drag Race was with Paramount and
Mhm.
Star Trek was with CBS.
Yeah.
And when they merged, I was like, I'm on the same network as Star Trek. And I literally
Yes.
contacted all of my Paramount contacts and I was like, if there is anything in Star Trek, like I was like, give me PR packages. I was like, send me everything. And they literally have like and you mentioned this earlier, but I got to host Star Trek Day and then I got to do a bunch of really cool stuff with
Yeah.
my friends at Paramount. So that's been really cool. But it's literally like, as luck would have it, like because when we filmed, there was Viacom and then CBS, and then they remerged to become Paramount.
Right.
Um, so yeah, it was very fortuitous for me,
Yeah. That's
the
awesome.
timing of it.
I was, and this is, when I bring somebody on that has a very extensive background in something other than Star Trek, I always ask, what came first, drag or Star Trek for you?
Oh, Star Trek. Absolutely. I mean, I've been a fan of Star Trek since like I before I even knew really what drag was. Like
Yes.
yeah, Star Trek was like yeah, I moved around a lot as a kid, and that was like
Mm,
one thing that was consistent in my life was like watching Star Trek. My dad loved it too. I mean, he still loves it, but that was something we kind of connected on together. And like yeah, I was like one of my favorite books as a kid. I don't know if you have it. The Okudas wrote that Star Trek encyclopedia.
I think I do have it over on my shelf, actually. Yeah.
I would sit there and read that thing cover to cover. And like, what I loved about it is, because Star Trek was mostly on syndication in those days until Voyager on UPN.
Right.
But you would, they reference something on the show, and then I would like go look it up in the encyclopedia or vice versa. I loved it. I
Ah,
was such a little nerd in that way. I would just sit there and read that. And yeah, I loved all of it. I think, you mentioned, what is like the access point for Drag Race for people. I think one of the access points for me for Star Trek is I love the world building of it all. Like
oh, yeah.
I love the kind of like understanding each different alien species, like what makes them tick, like how it all works with the Federation. Like I love that kind of world building.
Yeah.
So I'm excited because I feel like our episode is like about that in a lot of ways. We
Oh,
learn a
totally.
little bit about the Orions, lot of cool things. Not to jump to the episode, but I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
it's a cool episode in that way.
Yeah, I think there's definitely it's kind of neat because you do get yeah, and we're jumping ahead just for a moment here, but I want to explore this while we're here. You got characters from the future who appreciate the past, and you've got
Hmm.
characters in the past who are questioning the things that
The
they
future.
may or may not know coming in the future. It's a really
Yeah.
interesting balance. There's a lot of really neat stuff going on in this episode. But before we get there, I want to ask you, because you get to meet, Boimler and Mariner get to meet their heroes. You get
Hmm.
to not only hug Whoopi Goldberg, but you got some training with her on Drag Race, which
Hmm.
means I'm jealous twice. So I got to ask you two questions. One, has her advice stuck with you as you continue to perform? And two, does Whoopi Goldberg smell like NYC in early spring or NYC in late summer?
Well, I have a horrible sense of smell, so I couldn't tell you. But I
Okay.
remember being a very warm hug. So I remember like feeling very cozy. So maybe
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess it was the autumn, is what I'm
Nice.
gonna guess. She felt very like she has a very very nurturing vibe.
She does seem very sweet.
Well, and it's funny, you're a stand-up comedian, and if people remember this episode, I can remind them that she was there to coach us doing a one-woman show, which could be whatever we wanted. Originally, I was going to come and do stand-up. I was going to like, which is funny because I never really, I mean, I don't really do stand-up. I host a lot, but I don't, and do crowd work, but I don't actually
Yeah.
like write a lot of prepared bits and what have you. So I
Hmm.
tried it, and she was like, and she gave me the best piece of advice that I've taken with me, which feel free to take it too, which is that don't worry about being funny, is what she told me. She was like, I
Hmm.
met you, like you're a funny person, like you find you're funny, like you don't have to like try to be funny, like I'm funny enough, like I don't have to add something that's, or think I have to perform in some way.
Yeah.
She said, just tell me something true and you'll find a way to make it funny, which is what I ended up doing and doing really well in that challenge. But that's like good advice that I've taken with me, because since then I've written a lot of one-woman shows that I do, around the world, around the country. And that's something I always think about is like, even though drag is such a heightened art form, like I always make sure that there's like still elements of me and my truth there, right there, so that you're connecting with me, and hopefully I
Yeah.
find a way to make it funny. So that's kind of the gist of the advice and something I've taken with me ever since.
I work with enough newer comedians. I've been doing it for the better part of a decade now, but I work with enough newer comedians that trying to help find that voice and then refine that voice and shape
Yeah.
that material. And so many of them go up there just swinging for the fences on everything. It's like, you haven't been pitched anything. You're swinging at nothing. Like, give yourself a break. Be honest, be real. You can take a nugget of truth and shape it into something funny. Like, I had to explain that to my wife of like, when I go up there and talking about my wife, it's not you. It's a caricature. It's sort
Right.
of a distillation of everyone's wife. And I had to explain that to her because she got upset
Don't
with
let the
me.
truth get in the way of a good story. That's a good piece of
Exactly.
advice too.
So we mentioned this episode that there are, a very unique episode where they are combining characters from an animated show into a live action show. I know there was concerns on the set. I think there's famously a clip of Anson Mount going like, "Are we going to be acting to tennis balls? Like, what's going on?" But they actually do it really well. You, having worked with many drag queens, not only on RuPaul's Drag Race, but in your life as a performer, who would you say are the most cartoony drag performers that you've ever worked with?
I mean, that's a good question. I feel like if you watch season 12, Heidi N Closet is such a cartoon. She is hilarious. She's
Fair.
got those like big, beautiful eyes. Like she is so funny. Like
Yeah.
I think she has voiced a cartoon somewhere. I feel like she may have. Someone look up her IMDb. But
Yeah.
uh comment if this is true. But I feel like she's voiced a cartoon because she's such a like a funny high-pitched voice, and it's like she's
Yeah.
got those like big beautiful eyes and she's got the gap in her teeth. Like she's just so funny. She is a full cartoon of a human for
Yeah.
sure. Heidi and
Yeah.
Closet. For my season, Crystal is another cartoon in a different way. Definitely visually a cartoon. I mean, she
Ah,
paints in a really cool way. So
yeah.
that's funny too. It's that's funny to think if they would have actually had them animated on the Enterprise would have been funny. Have just two characters randomly animated.
Yeah.
Uh
Yeah. That would have been cool. There's yeah, looking at, as I've gotten older, you start paying attention to things like writers and directors and, how these things that we love, come to be. And, you start looking at the voiceover talent and start looking at all the little behind the scenes and the early sketches and early voice tests and stuff like that. It's such a interesting process. I would love to pick Mike McMahon's brain because, he's not only is he like an animation comedy nerd, but also clearly very much a Star Trek nerd. Um, but anyways, talking about this episode, and we'll stay spoiler free for just another few minutes before we get to the recap. I remember when this episode came out, this was a big one. This was a huge,
hmm
huge deal because, like, we're bringing these characters to live action and they're going to be played by the people who, voice them on the animated show. Were you excited about this? Do you recall, watching it and that first reaction to this episode?
Oh yeah, I was like so excited to see this. I mean, this was like Christmas. It was just like,
Yeah.
and it was such a, this episode was clearly like a love letter to the fans. Strange New Worlds has tried that in a couple different ways.
Hmm.
This, I think, was the most successful. Like, there were just so many little things, especially in the dialogue of what Boimler and Mariner say that are just like there are in all episodes of Lower Decks. But I would say that in this episode specifically, I was just like, oh, there's so many little things for the fans to pick up on that
Yeah.
was like so fun.
Yeah, absolutely. There's that the very quick banter. And I think that's one of the things that I've been really impressed with, about Lower Decks. Unfor- I refuse to speak about Lower Decks in past tense. It's just on a
You know
long
what? You know what's
hiatus.
I mean, look, how many animated shows have come back from the brink? You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
it's not impossible. Paramount's in a lot of state of flux, as it were. So
Yeah, yeah.
all it takes is someone with a paycheck and a dream.
Very true. Very
There's no
true.
reason that couldn't come back. And it's
Yeah.
it's what's so nice about animation too is it doesn't really matter where the cast is. Like they can be, like Jack Quaid can be recording these in the middle of season 18 of The Boys. Like he can do it from anywhere, which
That's
is great.
true. Yeah, yeah. It's and about Lower Decks, one of the things that really impressed me is how much world building, how much
Hmm.
character development that they were able to get in half the time of a normal episode.
Yep. 22 minutes.
Yes, incredibly tight writing. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's crazy. But yeah, and Strange New Worlds, the I've met very few people who don't have a great reaction to Strange New Worlds because it's essentially an anthology series. Like every episode watches like a
Yeah.
movie. So there's something for everybody. And this was perfect. It was like I don't really get this, the Strange New Worlds show. Oh, because it's strange and new. Like that's in the title.
It's true.
What did you think it was going to be?
I love that so much discourse is like, but they don't go to new worlds every time. And I'm like, it's okay. I think the idea is that it's different things happen in every week, which is,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I think is very much a reaction to the opposite of what Discovery was, which was always these like 10 episodes, season long arcs with one kind of goal that you establish in the beginning and take 10 episodes to get to, which is completely different than what's how Strange New World is operating.
Yeah.
And Starfleet Academy is kind of like somewhere in between, which is fun too.
Yeah, I've noticed that with I just caught up last night. I'm almost never able to watch it on Thursday. I always end up having to watch it on Friday or Saturday. But we're all caught up and yeah, there's some really fascinating things going on. The last episode that aired, this was well, I don't know that I should say what it is because somebody might consider it a spoiler. But anyways,
Yeah, we'll hold on. We'll hold on any spoilers for
yeah,
Starfleet
it
Academy.
involves Sam and the Doctor, which that relationship is established earlier in the season, and we'll leave it at that. But it is one of the rare instances that it has gotten my wife to cry.
Yeah,
So
I was
yeah,
pretty weepy after too. I was like, that's beautiful.
yeah,
Robert
it's
Picardo
really
is so awesome. So that was cool.
yeah, that whole cast, yeah, they're batting 1,000. They're batting 1,000. It's great. One of the things I forgot to ask, and and again, we're kind of blending our shows styles of like a getting to know you with a covering of an episode. One of the things I forgot to ask, who's your captain? Are you a TNG kid?
I'm Janeway's my captain.
Okay,
She's well, and I mean I love TNG and Deep Space Nine, and I love elements of the original series. Some of the original series I'm like, little sexist, little, whatever.
sure.
But yeah, I mean Voyager is the show that I watched like from beginning to end. Like I was already a Star Trek fan when Voyager started, and
Mm,
it being like on a network at the same time every week. I like that's the one I watch from beginning to end. So like
gotcha.
Janeway is definitely my captain.
Nice. Yeah.
And Kate Mulgrew is such a badass. Like
Oh, yeah.
she's so awesome.
Yeah, everything that she's done with that character has built Janeway into a legendary
I know.
figure in the
I
franchise.
wish that they could either give us a third season of Prodigy or give her a show or something.
Something. Yeah, it's and I get it. You don't want to typecast, but I think she's had kind of a similar track of like Leonard Nimoy, who he released that book I'm Not Spock, but give
Yeah.
it a few years, he's like, no, this is pretty awesome. Yeah, I'm Spock. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like she's kind of had a similar track of like, well, this is a job, it's good,
Yeah,
okay,
she walked
well, it's
away.
over.
But I think you realize too, like the longer I've been a Star Trek fan, the more you realize like how dedicated the fandom is and like like they're never going anywhere. So like,
Yeah.
and they'll always love you.
Yeah. It's, in terms of fandoms, because I mean, I know you can't see the shelves behind me, but like, I feel like there's very few people who are just solely a fan of X. It's like, oh, it's
Right.
Star Trek and Marvel, or
Hmm.
Batman and Doctor Who, or whatever it is. I have a lot of fandoms represented on these shelves behind me.
Hell
But
yeah.
yeah, these fandoms, I feel like the Star Trek, like true Star Trek fans, like if you've got a Star Trek fan, they are a Star Trek fan for life. Like
Oh yeah.
everything else seems to kind of ebb and flow, but like
Hmm.
Star Trek fans tend to be pretty loyal regardless. Like true Star Trek fans.
I think probably because there's, like I said, I think the world building kind of always brings you back because
Hmm.
you can always go back and kind of like relive things. And also, what's also nice is, from the beginning, but certainly starting with Next Generation, they have
Yeah.
a lot of different ages represented. I'm a little younger than Will Wheaton, but like, that was kind of like my access point to Next Generation. And
Yeah.
now, I'm much closer in age to like Riker, so it's like, or Troy, so when I watch, it's kind of different. And someday I'll be the age of Picard, and so you can always kind of go back and kind of relive those moments kind of as you age yourself and like experience life in different ways, which is,
You-
I think, one of the fun things about any show, but certainly Star Trek's been very multi-generational, especially from the TNG era.
Oh, totally. I definitely, and I think I've mentioned this on the show before, but watching it as a kid, and I don't know that this sunk in until I could, look back on it with some perspective. But I think there were a few key shows. I was born in '83, so late '80s into the '90s, there were some shows that I found a character that's like, oh, that's what it is to be a man. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and TNG was one of them. I looked at Riker and was like, that's what it is to be a man. But because of his
Hopping
relationship,
over chairs.
hopping over chairs, exactly. But like his relationship with Picard, and Picard looks very much like my dad.
Yeah.
That dynamic was very interesting to watch because Riker also kind of a little bit looked a little bit like my brothers. So I was like
Yeah.
watching that, and I'm the youngest of three. So watching Will Riker and Picard interact with Wesley, I
Hmm.
I kind of saw a little bit of the
Yeah. You see
path
yourself
of,
in it.
yeah. And so the other one was Highlander. Like, come on.
I've never seen Highlander, but
Yeah,
work.
like it's such a slice of the '90s. And if you dig kind of the fantasy, the fantasy element type thing, it's a banger. It's great. Highly recommend. But Adrian
Added to
Paul,
my list.
yeah, Adrian Paul in Highlander, that was the other one. Was like, oh, okay, I grow a ponytail, drive a cool car, carry a sword with me at all times. Got it. Awesome. That's what it is to be a man.
Great.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I was like, I mean, I was such a Wesley crusher. Like, I was the kid, like, always raising my hand in class, always knew the
Uh,
answer. Like, I'm like the Hermione. Like, I was totally like one of those kind of kids.
I was gonna say,
It's funny because like as an adult watching it back, I was like, oh, he is kind of annoying, isn't he? Much
I
love to Will Wheaton. I love Will Wheaton. What a sweet, wonderful man.
yeah, he seems like such a nice guy. Yeah, I kind of had the opposite experience. I was not a good student at all. It wasn't until much later that I was like, oh, I can start analyzing, what these things mean, and start learning from history. And oh, like
Mm.
math actually teaches you physics, like, and then you start learning like cool, like really cool science stuff of like what happens when things explode, like. But no, that was
Hmm.
not emphasized. It's like, learn this
Right.
math, shut up and be quiet. This episode was really, really fantastic. So did you have a chance to rewatch it, before we started
I
talking?
did. I did.
Awesome,
I did
right?
rewatch it. It's a great
Yeah.
episode. I love that we open, on the Cerritos. I love everything. I love that jumping to the end. I love that we see all the characters animated at the end, which is fun too. It's a really fun episode. It's amazing how they were able to blend the styles of the two shows because they
Yes.
are very different in terms of the way characters talk, and they comment on it too, but it's just the whole thing I thought was really well done and smart.
Even looking at something like all the little details, because I mean,
Hmm.
animation is meant to feel less detailed, which results in it being more iconic, which means the audience can connect more because it's easier for them to see themselves in a character.
Mm.
But looking at the details that they brought from animation into live action, most notably the boots that have the little that have the delta on the bottom of them. You only see them for a split second when Boimler's laying on the table in medical, but Boimler's hair, it was like,
The purple hair, yeah.
yeah, how are they going to do the purple hair? But when he's there, it's like, yep, dude's got purple hair. There it is. And
They're both in like, I mean, and Tawny's, they're both in wigs, which is fun, you know. I mean, Tawny was like, they gave me the biggest wig. I was like, work. It looks great. I mean, it really gives that cartoony proportions, you know, because
oh
it's
yeah,
like, it works surprisingly well, you know, that they are translated into these live action characters, which is so
right.
fun.
Yeah,
I was living for every moment. And I think, you know, it's fun for us as the fans to see what these uniforms look like, not animated, because you know, that's another thing. I've always loved the uniforms. I've always loved like how they change over time. I mean, jumping over to Starfleet Academy, there's just so many different uniforms on that show. I was like, wow,
yeah.
we really got a different outfit for every occasion.
Yeah, and that is one thing I noticed as somebody. It might have actually been my wife. She was like, "Is it on wrong?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Look, the bottom. It's not aligned." I was like, "Oh yeah," and then but I was like, "Actually, that's an aesthetic choice. Like if you look at the
Yeah, that's an aesthetic choice from Discovery they carried over. Yeah.
yeah, and I think even going back to TNG, I think the spike was over. The spike in the color was kind of off to one side. It wasn't like perfectly in the middle.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it's fascinating to look at like infographics that fans have put together, like comparing all the uniforms and seeing the process from like the NX-01 all the way through
Hmm.
and seeing like, oh, it changed a little bit to this era and then, and then it progressed here, yada, yada, yada. It's a fascinating thing. But yeah, and also it's kind of fun because we see the Strange New Worlds Enterprise crew
Hmm.
also get they're tasked with maintaining their character, but also it's a give and take between these characters who are coming from admittedly a very silly version of Star Trek into live
Right.
action. But if they just deadpan deliver, then like none of the jokes are going to hit. But you see like Anson Mount, Rebecca Romaine, the entire cast. It is definitely a give and take between these characters, so they're actually having to shift a little bit too, and it's done so well.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to watch. I think it's definitely something that if you've only watched one series, I'm curious what it would be like watching. You know, I'll never have that experience because I watched both series as they were happening. So it's
Right,
like
right.
I'm curious what if you only know one of them and you're like, oh, I'm jumping into this now. I wonder what it would be like. But that's something for the fans. And did anyone go in watching this not having seen both series? Chime in. I don't know. I'll never have that experience.
Yeah, seriously, reach out to either of us, both of us, and let us know. And who knows, we may read your comment on the next episode or something. Well, I can tell that we both have a lot of things that we want to get into about this episode. We're both chomping at the bit. But first, let's get to this week's recap. Brought to you in part by our Patreon supporters Rev J, Jerry Antimano, Kitty B, Ed Milner, Fleet Admiral First Class Fred Sims, and Wren, Sir Chauncey Dalton Featherstone Waugh III, Esquire, Zitzman Chiropractic, Dawn Ringheiser, and Nate D.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Number one to Enterprise, we might have a problem.
Computer and program? Never mind.
He's Starfleet and from the future.
Let's get our friend home before it alters the timeline. Riker!
What are you doing?
I feel like I'm trying to stop a toddler from knocking over the furniture.
Oh, hell yeah! One, time traveler is a security threat. Two is a disaster. I thought you said they were cool.
They are? This is serious.
In the 24th century, an away team of ensigns from the USS Cerritos arrives at the planet Krolmuth B to perform routine scans on an old portal.
That sounds simple enough, doesn't it?
While Brad Boimler excitedly says it was discovered by Enterprise, Devana Tendi insists it was found by an Orion science vessel that her ancestor was stationed on. When Boimler has his picture taken, the portal unexpectedly activates, sucking him through and dropping him at the feet of Una, Lon, and Spock in the 23rd century.
And on that note, we cue the music.
The crew tries to figure out how to send Boimler
Back to the future!
while Boimler unsuccessfully tries to avoid divulging knowledge of future events.
Dang it!
An Orion ship arrives and Boimler convinces Pike they're a harmless science vessel, but they transport the portal onto their ship and warp away. Boimler helps the crew track the Orions, and they get the portal back by trading grain supplies which were destined for a colony in need.
Sucks.
Enterprise takes the portal back to Krolmouth B. Before Boimler can return to his time, Beckett Mariner comes through to rescue him and exhausts the portal's power supply.
Great.
Boimler and Spock fail to synthesize more of the portal's power source, the rare material heronium, while Mariner discovers that her idol, Uhura, is too focused on work and needs help relaxing. Pelia informs Boimler of the irreplaceable nature of the grain they traded to the Orions, and a remorseful Boimler tries to contact the Orions to get it back.
Sneaky, sneaky, sir.
He and Mariner are detained and have a conversation with Pike, during which Boimler realizes that the NX-01 was made from heronium, and a piece of that ship was included in the construction of the 1701. On the surface of Krolmouth B, the Starfleet officers encounter the Orions, who received Boimler's signal.
Hi. How?
Pike explains the situation, and Boimler mentions that in
The future!
Orions are no longer seen as dishonorable pirates, and that one of their friends is an Orion. Pike asks for the grain back, and in exchange offers to let history remember that the portal was discovered by Orion scientists. The Orion captain happily agrees. Boimler and Mariner successfully return home.
And there was much rejoicing.
Hi, this is Conan Trenier from Star Trek Enterprise. You are listening to the Computer Resume podcast.
All right, so we are now officially in spoiler territory. Anything about this episode jump out at you, remind you of certain things, make you question, anything? Again, it's a very silly episode, largely from bringing in these two cartoon characters into live action, but like there's some stuff going on here. Like we see these characters are still dealing with certain things in their lives. Boimler's got his sort of neurotic tendencies, and Mariner, her gusto ends up kind of screwing up their plan, and now they have to find another workaround. Her zeal causes things to kind of get put behind. And not to mention, like, Spock and Chapel are still dealing with their stuff. And as great as it is to watch, like, it's, Spock's going through a thing, and then Chapel finds out, unfortunately, from Boimler, and then So anything about this episode jump out to you?
I think, we as the audience know a lot more than these characters about a lot of things, right? We know that, for example, that Chapel and Spock don't end up together, so that is something that's like well established that this show keeps toying with in different ways, and so it's interesting as we watch this to know that in some ways it's because of Boimler and Mariner that maybe they don't end up together, which is that was kind of a new wrinkle, I think for a lot of us, we were like, oh, she'll probably, he'll realize he has his wife and not, blah, 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 and all that stuff, or his betrothed. And I think this was kind of a new wrinkle they added to that, which kind of helps fill in some of the color of like, why don't they end up together? They seem, so great for each other.
Yeah.
I think another thing that's interesting for this episode is the world building of the Orions, I think is interesting because if you think about the Orions and kind of how they've existed in canon, like we start with their representation in the original pilot in as the famous Orion slave girl,
Of course.
and then you see them again as kind of these highly sexualized characters kind of coming up later.
Yeah.
Then we kind of think of them more as pirates, is kind of what the most latest version of them was kind of in Star Trek Discovery and also in this era of Strange New Worlds. So I think it's interesting that because of Tendi, we see and learn more about the Orions as scientists. We can think of those old scientists referring not just to our friends on the Enterprise, but also to the Orions, which is, I think, interesting, where as we world build more and learn more about the Orions, they become more interesting and we learn more about their history. So that's, I think, was really a fun kind of detail this episode also dove into, and I think also goes back to cultural racism we see even today, in America and around the world of like, oh, these people from this country are like this, or these people from this country are like this. I think Star Trek gets better and better as we go into it more and more of like peeling back the onion and understanding like, people from different worlds can all behave differently. And some of them are pirates and some of them are scientists. I think so. That was an interesting element that I really liked in this episode as well. And the other thing that jumped out to me was just kind of the blatant hero worship for Spock and for Uhura, which is funny, I think is one of those things where, especially because both of them, especially Uhura at this point in her career, are so, early, Uhura I think she's just still an ensign. What is she, an ensign at this point?
I think she is just an ensign at this point. Yeah.
Right. So she's at the same rank that they are, which I think is fun. And it's got to be kind of a mind trip. Someone from the future is like, oh my God, you're amazing. And you're like, I just started working here.
Just got here. Yeah.
I think that was a fun element. And then the Spock smiling, right? That being like because I believe Spock is still alive and around in the time of Lower Decks, or has he already jumped to the Kelvin universe?
I think he may have jumped to Kelvin by now, or by Lower Decks. That's something for the fans to let us know. But so I'm curious if they talk about Spock kind of as this huge figure, but he's also like very much of their time as well. Knowing that Spock lives all the way into the era, certainly of their lives. Maybe that's true.
Not exactly the moment they came from, but
yeah.
And as far as they know too, even when Spock jumps universes, I think we know. Do the characters in the Prime universe know that Spock is still alive when he jumps to the Kelvin universe? Is a good question.
As far as I know, because the comic book actually reveals a lot of the stuff that didn't make it into the movie. I don't know if you've read. I don't know if you've read Countdown. It's fantastic.
Oh, it's like the lead up comic book to
that first movie.
The first Kelvin movie. Yeah, interesting. No, I should read that.
It's really great because it kind of establishes where they're at in the Prime universe in terms of the timeline. Because Picard's still around. Worf is an ambassador to is the Federation ambassador to Klingon. The ship is also built. It's built by the Vulcan Science Academy with Geordi LaForge, which kind of makes sense.
Of course.
Data is actually the captain of the Enterprise, and so I think there is a chance that Spock is alive maybe when they're born, but maybe not when they travel back. I don't know. That's a good question. That's a great question.
Because I believe Lower Decks takes place like shortly after the events of, like, it doesn't take place at the end of the 25th century. It takes place like it's still like it's before Picard, like the
it's definitely before Picard. Yeah, because Riker's
still a captain.
Yeah, Riker's still a captain, and he's retired in Picard. So so Lower Decks is definitely before Picard.
Yeah, that's something for the fans to figure out. But anyone listening, let us know. But the reason I bring it up because I'm like, I wonder, I guess it would be like if I'm trying to think who's like a really cool figure that's still alive today. But if it's like, if I jump back in time and I met like Barack Obama when he was in college, I'd be like, oh my God, you're
Yeah.
Barack Obama. And he'd be like, yeah, I go to school here.
Yep,
It's
I go
just
to school.
funny.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's weird to think about that. Yeah, like looking at Boimler, who right off the bat, he loves what we'll call yesterday's Starfleet. Um, and I know had this feeling of like, oh man, I wish I'd have been born in this particular era so that I could live through this particular time
Hmm.
period. Have you ever felt like you should have been born in a different era, or is there a particular era that you would have liked to live through?
Oh, I would have loved to like be in New York in the 60s. I bet that would be so fun and see that all that happening, all that like counterculture that was happening. I mean, a dangerous time in its own way too, but
Oh,
so
for
are the
sure.
times we're living in today. So
Yeah.
but I think that would have been really cool to like, see Judy Garland at Carnegie Hall, do
Oh my
just kind of all these cool things that happened in the 60s, I think would have been cool. And like the hope of the 60s, I think is something that like I wish we had today, like
yeah.
that, you know, uh, granted, so much of it I think came from the fact that we didn't have eyes on a lot of things, and some of the reality of people's lived experiences. But,
Hmm.
the feeling of hope was, I feel strong in the 60s for change, for future, for, space. I think all of these things were like possibilities in the 60s, which would have been cool to experience.
Yeah, like post, because I really enjoy sort of the cars, the clothes of like post World War II. Still very still I feel like very elegant.
Mm.
But it was like every day, when I walk through an
Oh
airport
yeah,
and
I mean in the 50s it was
yeah,
very much about like being glamorous, like
yeah,
even in your home, I think that was like glamour was something, the 50s were such a interesting time because it was very like we won the war, we should be happy, like go
yeah,
America kind of
yeah,
thing. And I think the 60s is where you see that unravel a little bit,
yeah, the
but there's still so much
facades.
optimism.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean a lot
Like
of people talk about the 60s.
just before the Vietnam
Yeah.
hits and oh my God, I forgot the president's name. I'm not
Oh, Nixon. Yeah.
Nixon, thank you. God, whoa.
Yeah. Nixon's
I've taken
tough.
a lot of shots to the head. Yeah, like before we get into that, like stuff was at a height, but yeah, like the facade, like the fake the putting on airs of the 50s like starts
Yeah,
to crumble into the 60s,
totally.
and then you get like into the hippie era of like, hey man, like let's all come together and we don't
Yeah,
need
and it
the
was like,
cars and clothes and yeah.
and I think in the 60s too is like, certainly in cities like New York and San Francisco, like gay men could live their lives to a
Right.
degree, and obviously there were still raids on bars and stuff, but it was like it was a time when you could find a tribe and like live a real life here.
Yeah.
Which is cool, and I love the 60s clothes and I love, yeah, that'd be so fun.
Yeah, it's seeing all that stuff, and it's definitely because as I start to think about that stuff, I come up with, well, yeah, I would love to be able to experience that stuff, in the 40s. And then I think, oh, would I have survived World War II? Like, so many
Yeah,
lives, so many men got like drafted.
yeah,
Would I have survived? Would I have even had a chance to
yeah.
experience the 50s? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely two sides to every coin, and I think there's having two sides is a good thing and a bad thing. And I think Mariner actually kind of gets to bring a little bit of that rebellious nature back with her to some folks who, like Uhura at the time, totally work focused. She mentions there's a lot of pressure on her to
Hmm.
excel. But Mariner kind of gets gets her to take a break, just gets her to breathe
Have
for
a
a second,
drink,
have a drink, relax for a second, and like talk to any doctor. They're like, yeah, your brain needs to like rest and relax and reset, like so that you can
Yeah.
actually perform better. And she does. So I know I've felt this when I'm, up to my eyeballs and, work and trying to prep things and comedy shows and podcasts and yada yada yada. When you find yourself in the soup, as it were,
Mm.
up to your eyeballs. How do you rest? How do you relax? What is your way to reset?
I have a very I'm a compartmentalizer to a fault, which means
Mm,
I'm very good at procrastinating because I can just put things off and put things in little corners of my mind. Like, oh, I'll deal with that later or this. So I'm and most of the time it helps me like not be stressed because I'm good at not thinking about things.
ah,
But then of course eventually does hit the fan and then I'm just like, ah, nothing like a deadline and a not enough time.
yeah.
So it's a good question. Most of my life I kind of live in this like, oh, I'll get to that when I get to it kind of a space. But then, when the does hit the fan, hydration is the one thing that I always forget. I'm like, oh, I need to drink more water and I'll be fine.
Take
It's
care
it's
of
it's
yourself.
amazing this one element keeps us little humans running, but just hydrating and some fresh air, as basic as that sounds. That and like
Yeah,
mindless
it's
television sometimes too.
yeah, absolutely. I can't tell you how many times I've been about to go on stage and I don't smoke or anything, but I'm like, I'm gonna take the air for just a second and just go and
Yeah.
take a couple of big, big breaths and just kind of settle and let the nerves calm, clear the mind, focus, and then okay, let's go to work. And yeah, and again, water. Gosh, there's been so many times where I've gotten to a show and I've yawned a couple times. It's a long drive or whatever. I'm like, oh, let me get a big thing of coffee. And then I'm up there,
Shaken.
jittery with the microphone, or worse, oh yeah, let me get a rum and coke. Actually, let me get 2, 3, or 7 of them. And then
Oh
I
yeah.
pour myself onto the stage, and that's a bad night too. But yeah, just a big old glass of water. It does wonders.
Yep.
We see a lot of these characters in this go through a lot of this jumping through time. It's kind of a big deal, and it not only for our characters from Lower Decks, but for the folks on Strange New Worlds as well.
Hmm.
And Pike himself, is seeing what's going on, and finds out about the birthday party and all these things, and he ends up having this discussion where he admits that he wishes he could have just one more argument with his father.
Mm.
And I know, like, for me, like I lost my mom when I was 19.
Wow.
She was sick and then gone,
Mm.
and just very, very quickly. And gosh, wish I could sit at the table with her one more time or something like that. But
Yeah.
not to bring the energy down or anything, but if you could have just one more of any of your
Mm.
life experiences, what would it be if you could just have one more?
Yeah, I used to spend so much time with my grandparents when I was younger, and I miss them a lot. So
Yeah.
that's one thing I think of, especially, they lived in Canada for a lot of the time, when I was young. So going back there would have been nice. It'd be nice to like relive one of those summers. Summer as a child is so interesting because in some ways it feels like it never ends, and in other ways it's such a brief amount of your life. But
Yeah.
you know, it's such an interesting time because you have such no responsibilities, no school, nothing, and it was a interesting time. So maybe one more summer would be nice. One more summer as a kid.
Yeah. Oh gosh, summer vacation. Like, oh man,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that hits as you're a working adult of like, oh, the kids are out for summer. Gosh, I remember when I used to be out for summer.
Right.
And yeah, and
Yeah. Summer's when I work a lot, because summer's a good
right.
time for, doing shows and,
Oh, yeah,
different
totally.
vacation spots. So that's
Yeah.
definitely something.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
yeah. But, we still try to have fun in our summers, but I do miss that feeling of no bills, no nothing when you're a kid.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Speaking of spending time with your family, I actually got a chance to watch this episode with my father-in-law who was in town. He lives in Ohio and he's got family that lives in Florida, and we're in South Carolina, so he actually takes a pit stop here because it's a
Oh,
long drive, and
nice.
it's like, yeah, it's a long drive, and he doesn't like to fly. So while we were here, we put on the first episode of Starfleet Academy so he could see what the
What the
what the new
buzz is
show's
about?
like. Yeah. But then I was like, well, I gotta watch this episode in prep. So I was like, oh, let's put on this one. It's those old scientists. And at the end of the episode, he's like, well, I had a lot of trouble following. They talk so fast. They talk
Oh yeah,
really,
they do
really
talk pretty
fast.
fast.
And I was like, yeah. And, it made me, my wife actually pointed it out to me later. She goes, I wonder if that's why the older generation enjoys Legacy Trek and TOS as opposed to a lot of the
Hmm.
stuff in New Trek. Because they're having trouble following either the fast paced dialogue or sometimes whispering, in tense moments.
Sure.
Do you think there's anything to that? Like in terms of, I mean,
Interesting.
it's easy to, I feel like as God, spend 10 minutes online, you will find somebody who has a problem with something. But in terms of new Trek from the older generation, do you think maybe this is part of the issue? They just can't hear what they're saying?
I mean, it's got to be some of it. I think, when you look at the history of, media,
Yeah.
uh, we've moved from mid-Atlantic accents as being the standard on radio and television to,
Hmm.
people mumbling their words now. Um, and a big part of that is the technology, right? When radio first came out, when television first came out, when Star Trek was on TV, people didn't have amazing sound systems. There was not closed captioning on your television.
Very true.
So Kirk and Spock had to speak clearly and loudly and directly, and that kind of school of performing obviously informed people like Patrick Stewart as well in the next generation. And I think, certainly Kate Mulgrew too, and actually all three of them, and Avery Brooks, they all have very clear classical ways of delivering speeches, in that
Mm,
kind of theatrical vein.
yes.
Even though that wasn't necessarily needed by the time you got to the 80s and 90s, like we had good enough sound systems that we didn't need people to kind of be very clipped in their speech,
Mm,
which was developed as a necessity, right? So I was thinking about things from like a historical perspective. It's like we had to speak that way on the radio and television so people could understand us because people had speakers, like that's
yeah.
basically what it was. Now I watch all TV with captions on just because it makes it easier. I can see how things are spelled, like I like seeing
Um,
that, especially on a
yeah.
show like Star Trek where we're hearing, alien words. I like seeing how they're spelled. So I wonder, yeah, I mean, if you're not someone who likes to watch with the captions on, it might be difficult.
Mm.
But that is what television is. And I do think that, Star Trek has a job, which is to bring in newer, younger fans.
Oh,
Um,
totally.
we do live in a world where they can amazingly access all of the next generation, all of Voyager, all of Deep Space Nine. Voyager is the one that I always tell people, you've never watched Star Trek, go watch Voyager. You know, you kind of just need to know a little bit of the world building of the Federation, but then they're off meeting
Yeah.
new aliens every week. So it's definitely a different beast than something like Strange New Worlds or Lower Decks, which are steeped in lore in
Mm.
both shows. In terms of the way people talk, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, but I'm also someone who listens to podcasts on like 1.3 speed. So
Yeah.
maybe I'm not the
Yeah.
right person to answer this. But my thought is that, it's certainly if you're not used to television at a modern clip, it can be hard. But people were speaking that fast in the 90s. I mean, go watch Gilmore Girls.
Oh gosh, yeah.
It was definitely a show where people were speaking fast and going through things. But yeah, and then the kind of mumble acting I think is also of our times. So I don't know if it's a Trek thing as much as it is like that's kind of what TV is. And I don't know, you're already dealing with a property that's 60 years old. There are hundreds and hundreds of hours of this television show.
Yeah.
I don't think it makes sense to remake it in the mold that it was because
Yeah.
we don't need another dozen episodes of something that feels exactly like the original series or exactly like the next generation because
Right.
we have those things and we have access to them at our fingertips. It's not like they're hard to access now. So the only feedback I give to people who are like, I don't like new Trek, and it's like, that's okay. You have hours upon hours of old Trek to watch. And I don't think there's a way to please people who want the old thing because you're never going to be the age you were when you first experienced that. And,
Yeah.
I go back and watch old episodes of any TV show and I'm like, oh, that was not a great episode, or that was kind of a
Yeah.
doozy, or this is. And of course there are amazing moments that I remember as well, but you can't. I guess what I'm saying is you can't have it both ways. You can't want everything to be new and everything to be old at the same time. So,
Yeah.
in television is a business, and you got to make something new for people to watch. So
Yeah.
that's kind of that's my point of view on it. Is that if you're not someone who loves new television, then you won't like new Star Trek. I mean, to me, it's not any more or less fast or mumbly than any other TV show that's being made right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think for me, I think this exploration of a possible reason why it's getting negative feedback from an older generation, I think is fascinating to me because I see a lot of folks, and some have tried to engage with me online about, about New Trek. And I was like, well, what's your issue with New Trek? Well, it's just bad. Okay, can you tell me what? Can you tell me why? And I've yet to encounter anyone who has an articulatable reason why it's not a good show. And I was like, well, okay, that's your opinion then. No, and they're like, no, it's just bad. Well, no, it's not. It's bad to you, maybe. It's okay.
It's also tough too because I just find them also different too. Like I find
Yeah.
Discovery is very different from Strange New Worlds, is very different from Lower Decks, and I think Starfleet Academy is also very different than all three of those series.
For
So it's
sure.
hard for me to like those shows all feel so different from each other. And on some level, they also feel different from the previous series. Whereas it's tough because on some level, Voyager, Deep Space Nine, and Next Generation were also all different from each other, but also did feel very much like a continuation of each other, as opposed to Enterprise, which felt like something totally different. So yeah, it's hard because these shows do feel very different from each other. And even though, Strange New Worlds and Starfleet Academy are spin-offs of Star Trek Discovery, they're very different in my mind from each other.
Yeah.
So I don't, I don't know. My boyfriend's younger and he never really watched Star Trek, but he's been watching Starfleet Academy with me. And he's like, I like this show. I like knowing what's going to happen. And, he likes seeing, who's going to end up with who. And, some of the college drama of it all is appealing to him. And then, and I pull him in, give him some of the lore and tell him, oh, well, this is, it's interesting having a Klingon who wants to be medical officer, et cetera, et cetera. So there's stuff to bring people in, and I think it's about what your access point is. But if you want those kind of like that clipped speech and that kind of theatrical way of talking that Picard and Kirk and Spock and Avery Brooks and Janeway and Cisco, all if that's what you want,
it's out there. Go watch it.
I mean, and I think
yeah.
I think Ethan Peck does a pretty good job of making a Spock that's younger, that's relatable, that still feels like a version of what Leonard Nimoy was doing, but it's all very different.
Yeah, and looking at his portrayal, juxtaposed with Zachary Quinto, juxtaposed with Leonard Nimoy, and I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. Just those three alone, like you really see where they're taking inspiration from who has played before versus putting their own spin on it. And again, it's an art form. Like, there's so many hands on this thing. It's not any one person, pulling the lever and there we have a show. Like there's a lot of people, there's a lot of artists, there's a lot of decision making and discussions and meetings about every little thing I would imagine. So, and again, the fact that anything gets greenlit is a miracle. The fact that anything hangs around longer than the pilot episode, also just shy of a miracle too. Like, I mean, yes, Star Trek has longevity, but like, if it wasn't working, they'd pull the plug. And here we are. This is year 60. Like they're doing something right and they keep finding people who keep doing it right. So anyways, that's my soapbox about the New Trek haters.
Yeah. And, and there's still your old Trek you can watch.
Yeah.
No one's taking it from you.
Nobody's taking it away from you. It's right there. Yeah.
But all I'll say is if you think of the new shows, you take them on face value. I think there's something in each of them that could appeal to you.
Totally.
Sure. Discovery is maybe a little more emotional than anything ever was in previous Trek, and Starfleet Academy is obviously a lot younger than anything was.
Sure.
And Strange New Worlds is really trying a lot of different things every season. But, there's something there for everyone, So I think anyone who hates New Trek, I'm just like, well, you're missing out.
Yeah. I think where I get hung up is the folks who try to impose their opinion as fact. Like that's no, you're missing what both of those things are. It's not an opinion or a fact. It's anyways.
Well, and the one argument that just makes no sense to me is the like, why is there shoving diversity down our throats? And I'm like,
yeah,
because that's something Gene Roddenberry wanted to do. Like Gene Roddenberry purposefully put people of different ethnicities and cultural backgrounds on the starship at the same time, specifically to show a future where people from different places could work together.
Yeah.
Like that was one of his goals. You know, there's a reason there's a Russian who shows up in the second season. You know, we were getting into the depths of the Cold War, and, you know, it was important to show, oh, in the future, Russians will be able to work with people like with Americans. You know, I think that was really important. It was important to show that in the future, Black people will be right up there as scientists alongside white people. You know, it was important to show all those things for the creator of Star Trek. So that continues to this day. It is important to see a future where everyone's represented, and that includes queer people, drag queens, trans people. We will exist in the future. I'm sorry to tell you. Like my existence is not shoving anything down anyone's throat. You know, people are like, why are these, you know, about my episode of Starfleet Academy, like, what are these kids doing like at a bar? And I'm like, they're in college. Have you been to college? Did you what were you like in college? Because I think most people in college go to bars, whether or not they're of age or not. You know, it's also the 32nd century in San Francisco. I think, you know, there's a lot of different things that kids could be up to. And I think going to a cadet bar is not the worst thing.
Yeah, I was going to say there's probably way worse things they could get into. Yeah. I love it / hate it when I see the question, when did Star Trek get so woke? And I'm like, I can't type in 1966 fast enough.
Yeah. Like where were you? You know?
Oh gosh. Yeah. Well, you know, speaking about past generations and future generations, this episode touches on how future generations will remember certain events. You know, not only the events of this episode with the Orions, them saying, hey, as far as history is concerned, Orions discovered this portal. Small gesture to, you know, to ultimately send 2 time travelers back home. But, you know, the idea of how will future generations remember us or this time, given the current state of the world, how do you hope we are remembered?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're on the precipice of something as a species, right?
Yeah.
Just we've entered not quite the singularity, but we're close, you know, of computers being smarter than us. And I think that is less concerning to me than what we decide as a society to do with it. I think I feel very lucky to be a millennial in the sense that we're the last generation to remember the world before a computer was in our hands at all time. You know, and now the fact that children today have unfettered access to any piece of anything they want, good, bad, or ugly, is terrifying, you know. And I think the fact that just now, you know, how many years after the invention of the smartphone that we're finally talking about actual regulations on kids' use is going to hopefully means that, you know, Generation Alpha that's coming up will have it better. But I'm worried about Gen Z. I'm just worried about them as a cohort. Like they have just had it tough. And, you know, some people, to tie it back to Star Trek, one of the criticisms of, you know, Starfleet Academy is like, well, why'd they set it in this era post burn? And I'm like, because that's what kids are experiencing right now. You know, if you're under 25, the COVID-19 pandemic affected you at a very formative year of your life, whether you were a teenager or younger, you know. So it's something that's really affected those kids and how they perceive the world and themselves. And so having a show that's kind of looking at a post-traumatic event and kind of being optimistic about it feels very Star Trek to me, you know, in the same way that Gene Roddenberry's vision was also a very optimistic, you know, multicultural view of the future. This is also kind of a view of what happens when young people can get beyond their personal trauma, et cetera, to kind of be the better versions of themselves. So what people will look at this era, I hope, is finally people kind of recognizing that like we've created a world that's very difficult for the human mind to manage, especially young human mind, to manage all of this unfettered access to information and, content that's good and bad, and the way social media affects their sense of self-worth. I think it's now finally that we're something as a society trying to grapple with. So I'm hopeful that we're coming out of it in a way that will lead us to like, okay, actually, having 11-year-old girls judging their own bodies on Instagram is maybe not the best future for young people. And I'm hoping that people are seeing that. I feel very lucky that I didn't have that. I felt lucky that I did Drag Race in my 30s and not as a young 20-something, just being on that global scale, it's scary, and I think the fact that now any person can become, viral or whatever can really affect your brain. I think it's something that I hope in the future we look back and be like, oh, humanity tried it, and then they figured things out, before we get to, World War III and the eugenics wars and all that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, everything that's going on socially with technology, we tend to steer clear of political stuff, but you can't ignore it. The stuff that's happening, and not just in our country. There's stuff happening all over the world that is horrifying.
Very scary things happening.
Yeah, I hope some kid, decades from now is sitting in a classroom and gets to the chapter about the 2020s and was like, oh, it was pretty rough, but they pulled together.
They got out of it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping is I'm hoping we return to an age and an era where like, there's common shared values. And I think there's a lot of that's missing right now. So hopefully we get back to that, and we will see. Yeah. We will see what happens. I will say the one thing that I will miss that late 2010s explosion of streaming content. We'll never get that again. We'll never.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think we'll ever live in a world where there's 5 Star Trek series in production at the same time.
Oh my God.
That I will miss.
Yeah, for Trekkies, God, what a time to be alive. Like this is great.
Yeah,
Not
that's
only
where I'm like, it's like if you hate New Trek, I was like, well, that's a lot of stuff to hate because there's like 6 series now that have come out.
Yeah, I mean, not only is there a Trek for every mood, but like seemingly every night of the week, just about. That was awesome. Yeah, this has been really great. Gosh, well, we've shared our love and we've shared our hopes and dreams and all of these things, and we've championed some wonderful performances and some really fantastic things in this episode of Strange New Worlds, Those Old Scientists. But as we do, objectively and lovingly, we ask the question every episode: who do we blame? This episode was written by Catherine Lynn and Bill Wolkoff. Catherine's last work in the franchise was just 2 episodes ago, Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 5, Charades, which we discussed with the Trek Queen of NYC, Flip Kiki.
Love
mutual
Flip.
Friend. Yeah.
Yeah, I love her. She's great.
Oh, we've had quite a few chats, and she's an absolute sweetheart. Love her to death. Now, Bill's last work in the franchise was a bit further back with Robin Wasserman, Strange New World Season 1, Episode 6, Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach, which we discussed with Thomas Fletcher, a.k.a. Minimal Bricks. And this episode was directed by Jonathan Two Takes Frakes, leg hiker Riker himself. Yeah. His last episode directing was Discovery, Season 2, Episode 9, Project Daedalus, which we discussed with Computer Resume Podcast's very own executive producer, my lovely wife, Kat. And we've got some guest stars we definitely want to talk about. And I'm actually going to start with Greg. I'm not sure if it's Brick or Bryk. I'm going to go with Brick. I'm going to say Brick, Bryk. I think that's right, Brick. He plays Captain Har Karas of the Orion ship. A Canadian character actor who has been in a ton of stuff. Here's a few of the highlights: Mutant X, A History of Violence, love that movie. Shoot 'Em Up, Incredible Hulk. He played Malik in Saw 5 and Saw 3D. 24 episodes of as Amos in 13 the series. He played Jeremy Danvers in 33 episodes of Bitten. My wife will be very upset if I don't mention that he was in 3 episodes of The Handmaid's Tale. And he was in Ad Astra as Chip Garnes. This is his first, but hopefully not his last appearance in the franchise. I love this guy. He's got some gravitas in that voice. And I actually saw his IMDb photo. It's funny because I think the Orion makeup actually brings him down to just intimidating. Yeah, yeah. Have you seen any of those? I mean, I imagine you've seen at least Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, and that, and I've seen Handmaid's Tale, most of it.
Yeah.
So good for him. That's a pretty awesome career.
Oh yeah, it's
Hell yeah.
solid resume. Like honestly, if you dig character actors, folks, pull up his IMDb. It is lengthy. And then of course we can't get away without talking about Jack Quaid and Tawny Newsome, of course, reprising their roles here as Brad Boimler and Beckett Mariner. For those who are not familiar, Jack Quaid played Marvel in The Hunger Games and Catching Fire. He also voiced Alberto Falcone in Batman The Long Halloween. He's also the voice of Peter Parker in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And in 2019, he took on the role of Huey Campbell in The Boys. Definitely seems like he's got nerd cred everywhere. Marvel, DC, live action, animation. He's got all of that. And then we got Tawny Newsome, of course, as Beckett Mariner. She had quite a few guest appearances on some sitcoms and procedurals starting out. And she had some notable spots in some comedy shows like Comedy Bang Bang and Documentary Now. I love Documentary Now. It's so funny. 34 episodes of Bajillion Dollar Properties. 17 episodes of Space Force as Captain Angela Ali. That is a fantastic show. Highly, highly recommend. And she also co-wrote with Kirsten Beyer a recent episode of a little show called Starfleet Academy, featuring an appearance by Jackie Cox.
It's true. It is true. She did write this episode. I mean, I almost wish she would have written this episode, Those Old Scientists. I would have loved her take on it. Would have been fun.
Yes.
But yeah, I love Tawny as a writer and as a person, as a friend. She's really awesome. And, and I've gotten to hang out with Jack a bit too, and he's very cool. So it was fun. They got to do this together. I think originally, I don't know if this is public knowledge. I think originally the episode was written to only have Boimler travel over. And I think the episode's made so much better by having Mariner there as well. So it definitely makes it,
Yeah, because you could easily see the like as he's about to go through, like you could easily see that being the end of the episode. It's like, okay, well, we had our fun with our little cartoon counterparts, and it's made so much better with the addition of Mariner for sure.
Absolutely.
So let's briefly, we're pressed for time, but give us the rundown. Like, how did did they approach you? Did you bug somebody until they let you on? Like,
it's a good question.
How did this come to be?
It's funny. I mean, I'm always pitching myself. I'm always like, I told Mike, I was like, write me a voice. I'll do something in Lower Decks, and I actually did read for him for something, but it was a wrong fit for me, and it was like to be a villain of something on Lower Decks, and I was like, I don't know if that's really me. But then, Tawny and I actually, when she, booked Starfleet Academy, she like called me and she was like, I'm thinking, she's like, I'm working on an episode and I want there to be a drag queen. And then we actually had a lot of conversations around like what drag would be like and what its purpose would be, in the 32nd century. And I talked a lot with her about, drag is performance, and performance will exist forever. It's an art form that's not going to just disappear because, we're now in the 32nd century. And so one thing we talked about is like, why would my character, who's an alien, come to San Francisco to do it? And I was like, well, that's one of the first kind of proudly queer cities in America, and so I think that's part of the reason why Talon is in San Francisco. We even talked about like, these violations that we've seen throughout the series. And I am purple. It's hard to tell because I'm painted purple, but they have yellow light in that bar, so I look very gray, but I'm actually very purple. And so we talked about like, is drag welcome on Talon's homeworld, or does she come to Earth because it's something she can do there? So we talked a lot about like, what are some of the things that bring her to San Francisco, and that's why she's there. So yeah, we talked a lot about it, and then it ended up working because they needed, they have to fit a certain number of Canadian actors. There's like rules between SAG and ACTRA, who are the two acting unions between Canada and the States, of how many SAG actors versus Canadian actors they can have on a show filmed in Canada. And so this needed to go to a Canadian. So Tawny called me. She's like, "I'm so sorry, we have to give it to a Canadian." And I was like, "Tawny, you forgot. I am Canadian." It felt like that, the end of Cinderella where like the glass slipper smashes and he's like, "Oh no, all hope is lost." And she's like, "I have the other slipper." And he's like, "What?" So Tawny was like, "Oh my God, wait." So the one thing that was really fun is because they hired me as like a local Canadian actor. Like they didn't come with like a hotel or anything. So Tawny got this like Airbnb that I stayed with her at for like a week. I got to get there early. I got to be there on the days when she was filming. I got to be there on the day they were filming that crazy dinner with the frog thing.
Yeah, and the bullhorns, and yeah.
Yeah, I got to like live my full Star Trek fantasy and like literally wander around the set. Tawny gave me her badge. Like I got to wander around the sets. I was just like a kid in a candy store.
Oh,
it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And you in this character fit so well. So well,
right?
Like,
she's there. She's seen it all. She's like, you kids. I mean, they cut a little bit. I also have this other moment where I like freak out at Sam when Sam gets really drunk, and I'm like, "Girl, like, and they, we cut for time, but
Sure.
It wasn't in the script. But Larry, who was our director, was just like, "Jackie, why don't you improv? Like getting frustrated with Sam?" And I was like, "You got it." And so we did like a bunch of different versions of it, and Tawny was like watching the dailies, and she was like, "This is so funny." Well, she told me, they told me I couldn't write more for you because we didn't have time. And I was like, well, who knows? It'll get cut. It got cut. But it was, these things are timed, they only have certain amount of time for each episode, I guess. But yeah, it was really fun experience. All of the cadets are awesome. They were so great. So fun to work with. I had such a blast with them. And we all got to like, it was a location shoot. So we all got to like ride together there and ride back. So that was fun. Yeah.
Well, so speaking of cut for time, I want to, we are a little pressed for time, but I do want to ask one more question about your experience on Starfleet Academy. And I asked this of every actor that I've been lucky enough to talk with. Did you steal anything from the set?
I didn't steal anything, but I was given some things from the set.
Okay.
I don't know if they were allowed to give me them, but I was given some cool stuff.
Nice.
That nothing's stolen.
Gotcha.
But I was given stuff maybe I wasn't allowed to be given. And I won't say who or what it was.
I won't.
That is what I will say.
Your Honor, I will not press further. Well, we have just a few more things here. One of the questions we ask about every episode is this essential viewing? Like Star Trek's been running, we're in our 60th year here. So is this essential viewing? If somebody is sitting down and working their way through Star Trek and they come to this episode, those old scientists, is this a must-see episode, or is this one that they can skip?
I don't think you can skip this, especially if you are watching it in chronological order, which means you're watching Lower Decks too. Like you gotta watch this episode because it's such a beautiful love letter to the franchise.
Yeah,
it's such a great performances. I mean, just actually seeing Boimler and Mariner come to life was such a treat. Because we see them as cartoons, but to see them as physical beings, to see Boimler be Boimler in front of other human beings is really fun.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It is definitely a love letter to, it's definitely a love letter from the franchise to the fans.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that if you are on the track of watching the relationship of Spock and Chapel, I think this is
really important.
Yeah, especially for the development of Chapel's side of that narrative. If you dig the Orions, this is an important episode for the Orions. We talked a lot about that. I think it would make a good companion piece with the episode of Enterprise in season 4. I believe it's called Bound, but it's the Orion episode, where the NX-01 crew meets the Orions. And hell, there's a lot of NX-01 talk in this episode, a lot of hero worship of the NX-01 crew, which I gotta say, for folks going through New Trek, there's been enough love from the franchise for the NX-01 crew that it's been really heartwarming, honestly. I love it.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially just because they were definitely the redheaded stepchild of that era,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Jackie, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. This has been an absolute blast. Do you have any parting thoughts about this episode or the series or the franchise or your first, hopefully not your last appearance on our podcast? Any parting thoughts before we go?
Oh, yeah. I mean, just, all I'll say to people out there who are still on the fence about quote unquote New Trek is just to like go along for the ride, have some fun, And I think this show likes to have a lot of fun. Strange New Worlds has a lot of fun. I think Lower Decks had a lot of fun. And this episode kind of brings those two together in a really awesome way. So that's kind of my thought there on that. Yeah. And then for me personally, follow me on all my socials. I will have a new show coming out this summer. And for all of my fellow nerds, I will tell you the title of it right now. It's going to be called Beam Me Up, Jackie, an all-new cabaret that will feature my love of sci-fi, Star Trek, and everything else. So it'll be coming, it'll be definitely in Provincetown this summer, and then a few other places touring as well. So you can find all that on my social media at Jackie Cox NYC. Instagram is the one I actually update. So check my Instagram. That's actually what I use. I'm not on much on anything else.
Awesome. Well, folks, next time we will have author and former USS Enterprise engineer Michael LeBlanc back for a discussion of Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 8, Under the Cloak of War, which is available wherever you decide to watch Star Trek. Jackie, do us a favor one more time and hit us with those socials where people can follow you and check out things you're involved in.
At Jackie Cox NYC. Check it out.
And I am at Mr. Todd A. Davis on all of the socials. From all of us at the Computer Resume podcast, thank you so much for listening. And I'll see you in 10 Forward.
Us on Patreon and like, rate, review, and share on all your favorite platforms. Feel free to send us your subspace transmissions to computerresumepodcast@gmail.com or at Computer Resume on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The Computer Resume podcast was created and produced by Mr. Todd A. Davis. Our logo was designed by Will Martin and Justin Bishop. The opening theme was produced by Justin Bishop, and our outro music was provided with permission by Dronode. Additional music was provided by Mr. Todd A. Davis and Gary Horn, and the voice of Computer Resume podcast and executive producer, me, Kat Davis. # LLAP. We'll see you next time.
Going through a Star Trek. We're doing Star Trek stuff in space. We probably got some phasers and shuttle pods, and we're gonna find a brand new race.
How's that for a slice of fried gold?